Thank you very much. Good morning. I am actually going to talk less about, not about the standard much, other than I do want to mention that in the back of the standard, Appendix D, there is a write-up on how to express FLW in other terms or units of measurement. So there is some guidance actually in the standard on how to, what technical considerations to take into account when looking at environmental impacts, nutritional impacts, and financial implications. So it's in the back of the standard, but if you download the standard and go to Appendix D, you'll see some resources, and it lists where other data sources, other studies that have been used around the world to look at environmental, nutritional, and financial impacts. So anyway, back of the report. There's a lot of good information in there. It's just not always that easy to find if you haven't been as involved as I in developing it and reading it. My focus today, I was asked to speak specifically about the economic aspects. So I'm going to actually talk about the economic impacts without sharing any numbers, because this business case for reducing food loss and waste is embargoed for release until next week. But I will talk about the report, so you all are familiar with the report, and then next week will be the reveal about the figures. This project, Champions 12.3, is actually the entity that's producing the report. 12.3, we've talked a lot about this, SDG 12.3, it's up here on the, so everybody has the numbers and the goal clearly in front of you as we're talking. It's to have per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels, reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest loss. To support that target, this group, Champions 12.3, was developed in January of last year, and it's a coalition of leaders around the world who have expressed their support for meeting this target, and there are many in the room who are organizations who are represented in this Champions group, from UNEP to RAP. EDA's boss is part of this, and there are about 30 plus champions, and they we have talked with them and asked this question because there's a lot of interest in food waste, we know that. But the question is, if it can generate so many benefits, then why isn't it just an obvious leap for countries, cities, and others to be measuring? You think, big number, reduce it, save money, further waste is an inefficiency. And the answers we got back when asking the champions about, well, why isn't everybody just measuring and reducing food loss and waste, were multiple. One is, as you see on the screen here, is, the business case isn't entirely clear. The costs are buried in operational budgets. It's a cost, waste and shrink loss are accepted as a cost of doing business. That's just what happens. We heard Gail earlier, 2 days ago, talk about that. It's just accepted. There's a shrink factor, so why reduce it? And also there's this belief about the fact that the costs of taking action outweigh the benefits. So as you can see, if I've had all these factors for going against you, why invest the resources? So to address the specific question head on and really tackle the hard-nosed questions that the CFO is asking, this report on the business case for reducing food loss and waste is been developed over the last multiple months and will be released on March 7th. So this is the download on March 7th will be at this bit.ly site, but also at a Champions 12.3 website. And I'll keep it up here for a moment so you can take photos or write it down if you want. But there will be a lot of press around it, so you probably may not miss the launch. Hopefully, if the press efforts are successful, you won't miss the launch of this report. The research was conducted by World Resources Institute and wrapped together on behalf of the Champions 12.3 group. So I'll talk a little bit about what's in the report without, again, revealing what's embargoed until next week. In terms of looking at whether or not there is a business case, the analysis was done in terms of saying, let's look at the benefits and the costs and develop the benefit-cost ratio. And I'll get a little bit more into that in the next subsequent slide. The focus was purely financial, so very much on the economics, recognizing that there clearly is a non-financial business case. But if we just looked at the numbers that we could take up to the CFO and say this is the financial benefit and return, we wanted to narrowly focus in on that aspect. So data was gathered from individual entities, companies, looked across for countries and cities that had the data, Didn't find as much data on the country and city level that was existing we could use, but a lot of data on at the company level, and I'll share how much we collected in, again, a few slides. Another aspect that was really that we looked at is important to take into account that who pays for the reductions in food loss and waste are not necessarily the same group that benefits. And so there is a misalignment, which is why you sometimes have trouble making the business case, because it's not a direct, visible, tangible benefit, but suffice to say the return is high regardless. And the report looked again at historical data, so data on efforts that have been undertaken, applied a discount rate of over 3 years, 10% to do the analysis. In terms of looking at the country, the United Kingdom is the country that had the best available data. And if you have questions on that, Peter from RAP is who I'm going to point you to. You're welcome. Unfortunately, there aren't any other countries that have historical data currently available, but we obviously could repeat this in 5 years and anticipate that there will be more data that we could use. From a city perspective, West London was analyzed because there has been a lot of work done thanks to the efforts of RAP and others in the City of London. And then from a corporate perspective, we did get data from over 700 companies. We're able to analyze that. All was done in an anonymous way. That represents about 1,200 individual business sites across the spectrum of different types of businesses and across 17 different countries. So that's hotels and workplace canteens and restaurants, retailers, manufacturers, so a mix of different types of companies. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the corporate aspect, because that's where the data is. Oops, let me go back. Here we go. When we looked at the companies and looked at the financial benefits and the costs, to come up with a benefit cost ratio for $1 invested, how much was returned, the costs included looking at the quantifying and monitoring itself, whether that was buying scales or spending time on the quantification. We looked at training staff. We looked at investing in new equipment, whether it was storage equipment that was needed to reduce food loss and waste, changing storage, handling, and manufacturing processes, and then also changing packaging and date labeling. So looked at that was part of the cost analysis. And then the benefit analysis included the benefits of reducing unsold food, maximizing the revenue of that which was purchased, or launching new product lines, taking misshapen food or produce and repurposing it and developing a product line off of that. And the third piece we've been talking about a lot was also in this forum, reducing food waste management costs was also factored into the benefits. So taking that benefit cost ratio, I can share amongst this room that benefit cost ratio is at least a 10-to-1 factor, but more than that. So directionally, it's, you invest $1, you get more than $10, but I won't say how much more at the moment. But that's huge, right? That's way more than break even. 99% of the businesses in this study had a positive return. So we hear a lot of, oh, well, it has to be at least cost neutral to invest. Well, great, it's way more than cost neutral, and the returns are there. So our hope is when this report is released that this will inspire a lot of businesses to start to look at their own figures and sell the case to we call it the hard-nosed CFO. And that's my wrap-up. I just want to thank for the financial support we receive from others to do this work, because without it we would not be able to have produced this business case study. I think that's it.
Great, so let's move to some questions. So we'll take questions for about 15 minutes.
This question is for Brenda. My name is Gary from the state of Michigan. But in the new Senate Bill 1383, just to kind of bring it down to a store level, if you're a grocery retailer and you have certain dairy, meats, delis, produce that is being landfilled currently in the state of Michigan, or excuse me, in the state of California, this new bill, how will that be measured or tracked, or what impact is that going to have directly on that grocery retailer as it regards to their current perishable food landfill policy?
Well, you're not going to be able to do that. So Right now we have AB 1856, which I didn't talk about, which is an organics commercial recycling bill, but it has no enforcement in it, no real enforcement. It says you're not supposed to be putting your commercial organics in a landfill, you're supposed to be recycling them. But CalRecycle doesn't really have much more than a bad boy list hammer, to be truthful about that, on 1856. But 1383 came along this fall and said, well, we're going to fix that. And so CalRecycle has authority and some penalty consequences. And I'm not positive, but I think they're like $10,000 a day fines. And that can add up really quickly. And we don't typically come out using that hammer broadly and widely, but we use it very effectively. AB 939 was passed in 1989, and we had similar penalties under our authority. This was aimed at the cities and counties to implement recycling and diversion activities. And over the years, we also provide assistance to those cities and counties to show them how to do that before we come out in our enforcement and our penalty phase. And generally speaking, the cities and counties come on board, they implement what they know they have to. We run into a friction a little bit, and the attorneys start talking, and they say, yeah, that's the law. And so then they start behaving. So I think it's going to be very effective. Our challenge is going to be to place the mandates in the right locations, to get data and reporting so we know what we're doing and how we're getting there, and then to use our enforcement and compliance effectively, and then to bootstrap the infrastructure for moving these organic materials out of landfill to new alternatives, including edible food, to get that infrastructure in place to be able to receive it. And of course we have very aggressive timelines in the bill. So it's going to be a huge challenge, I think, for us. But
what I was a little bit confused on, the bill won't go into effect or law until 2022.
2022, I know.
But you've got some of these mandates
yes.
that,
yes.
I guess,
it's a sausage making.
Let's take it down to a practical application. I'm a store manager working for a grocery retailer. When do I need to, I'm not a store manager at a grocery retailer, but I'm just trying to solve a business problem here.
Right.
But what point in time are they going to go, uh-oh?
Well, usually a bill is passed and then you have phase-in in the future. This one is retro, as you've pointed out. We are also moving fast on our regulatory development and trying to have that adopted and in place late 2018, early 2019. That is not effective until 2022 either. But what it allows the cities and counties to know is that on 2022, if you are not achieving the 50% that you were supposed to achieve in 2020, then we have a full authority to come in and say, why not? And here's the consequence. So I think it's a vision. I think it tells people we're serious, get on board, do what you can, because in 2022 we're going to be coming out and looking. And so we're trying to get our reg in place to know, for people to know who's mandated to do what early, long before it's effective, so they can start doing that.
Okay, we have a few more questions. So Christine at the back, and then over to Roberto, who's got a very brief question I heard, and then over to Aaron, and then I see one at the back as well. So over to you, Christine.
Sure. This is a question for Brenda as well. I was just curious as to, you mentioned that the cap and trade revenue, there was some element of funding that went into the food donation system. It wasn't clear to me whether or not that's already in place or whether or not that's something that's coming. Yeah. And if it is in place, or if you know in the future how much revenue that will generate for the food recovery industry.
It is in place. The thing about the cap and trade dollars is they're hundreds of billions of dollars, so it's a big money source. But the other thing about it is that we don't have guaranteed funding from one year to the next because it's part of the California state budget, and we have a lot of argument in California about what that should be used for. So
general revenue.
Right, or building anyway. So so it's not what I would consider sustainable funding. It's big dollars, and when we get it, we're very excited. We had Cycle 1, and those were the case studies that I showed. There's a couple of ways that we're using that money. We are partnering, we are encouraging our haulers, but also our processing facilities for waste to partner on the front end. And so they're getting the lion's share of the money to build an infrastructure that we need to build to handle waste. But we're encouraging them, if they want disadvantaged community points, which are very high in these grants and they're competitive, they need to reach out and go meet the food rescue, food recovery organizations, and they're doing that. And so that's the first cycle that I showed. That was 14-15 money. We didn't get any in 15-16. So now we're working on 16-17. So that's why it's not sustainable. But in 16-17, we're adding to that a whole new grant program, which we're going to be launching, I think, this month or next. And that's specific to food recovery, food rescue organizations. That's $5 million grants. And we're really excited about that. It's for both small organizations and large. And will just be direct funding for those types of organizations.
And as a percentage, do you know what that is across the state? $5 million?
Percentage of what?
Total dollars spent in food recovery. So food banks.
No, I don't have any idea.
Just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Roberto.
Oh, wait.
Buenos días. Confieso que hoy tenía la intención de tener un perfil bajo en mis intervenciones para ser más efectivo en el mensaje. Pero las intervenciones tanto de Pete como de Kai necesariamente me obligaron a participar. Pete plantea no solamente un tema muy sensible, muy emocional, muy emotivo, sino nos invita a pensar y a repensar nuestro modelo de producción, comercialización y consumo de alimentos. Esta es la consecuencia. Efectivamente, podemos tener altos rendimientos en producción agrícola, podemos tener una distribución muy eficiente con logística, pero lo cierto es que tenemos un problema muy grande de pérdida de alimentos. Y algo que prácticamente no se ha tocado aquí es que esos alimentos perdidos tienen un costo. En economía nosotros decimos que es un costo de oportunidad. Un costo de oportunidad porque alguien lo paga. No solamente se va a la basura, sino alguien lo paga. Y los análisis de quién lo paga son muy importantes para ver cómo revertimos ese proceso. Cuáles son los incentivos económicos que tenemos que introducir, y aquí entra Kai en la ecuación. ¿Cuáles son los incentivos económicos para que los mercados de la cadena alimentaria, en lugar de ver, digamos, perversamente cómo transfiero mis costos al siguiente eslabón, cómo le hago para incrementar mis utilidades, mi valor agregado? En consecuencia, en el caso de México hemos hecho estudios en los últimos 15 años en donde claramente definimos que el costo lo pagan los agentes económicos más débiles de la cadena alimentaria. Ellos son los que pagan finalmente esos costos. Y en el caso de México, los agentes más débiles de la cadena son los consumidores y los productores. Paradójicamente, el inicio y el final de la cadena alimentaria. Los agentes económicos al interior de la cadena, sean los agroindustrializadores, la gran industria alimentaria, los transportistas o los vendedores en gran escala o en el retail, todos ellos tienen la capacidad de transferir sus ineficiencias y sus costos, sus mermas, sus pérdidas, al siguiente eslabón. Consecuencia, visto así, el costo de oportunidad estimado es muy, muy alto en términos económicos. Y eso justifica plenamente inversiones como nuevos negocios, nuevas oportunidades de negocio para poder utilizar inteligentemente ese alimento desperdiciado o tirado. Nosotros hemos hecho, concluyo, nosotros hemos hecho estudios en donde las tasas internas de retorno, la rentabilidad de esas inversiones están por encima del 20%. Una TIR de 20% es una TIR muy, muy atractiva para cualquier empresario. En consecuencia, el problema que tenemos es generar los incentivos económicos al interior de la cadena para que no haya 1 kilo de desperdicio, 1 kilo de tonelada o una tonelada perdida de alimentos. Y esto es, en el fondo, empezar a rediseñar el modelo de producción, de distribución y de consumo. De otra manera, no solamente los jaguares, no solamente los pandas, la especie humana tiene el problema de asegurar la sustentabilidad de la cadena alimentaria. Eso es lo que está en riesgo. Gracias.
Yeah, I mean, just in response, if I could, it's one of the reasons why I've been strategic about where we want to focus, both consumer level and with the hotel and hospitality industry. It's a great connection point. Because when I talk to chefs or when I talk to a GM, and especially in places like New York City, they just had a ban on organics, so you can no longer, as a commercial enterprise, put organics in landfills. And they think that's the solution. We're done, right? We don't put it in the landfill anymore. Well, when I talk with them, it's no, I don't even want you to create compost. That's the point, right? We don't grow food to compost it. And that's a fundamentally different cultural and behavioral tactic that has to bleed through. It's fundamentally different, and it's very difficult. But it's something that we're trying to do with this hospitality project. And then when you look back at farm, it's the same thing. It's fundamentally different to say we don't want to create any type of surplus. We want to have this kind of perfect re-engineering of the entire system. And seafood's another great example, I think. If you had the intention of designing a seafood supply chain that created zero loss throughout the entire stage, the value chain, it would look completely different probably than what it looks like today. And that's the thing we have to do. We can't accept loss at any point.
Okay, thank you. Aaron? Do we have a microphone there? Oh, you don't have one? Okay. Yeah, there you go.
I know. I thought my hand was one. I was born with the microphone in my hand. Anyway, I just thank you very much for your presentation, and it's interesting to find out what's happening in California. The first thing that kind of leapt out at me was that it was the goal for 2025 was a goal of 20% recovered edible food, and we've been struggling with that as a food bank, and we're successful working with the National Zero Waste Council to change edible to nutritious. And why that's coming, comes to the forefront is that I don't know if we really want to measure our success by the amount of Halloween candy and Valentine candy and Christmas candy that gets recovered. And so I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about that.
Absolutely. I mean, we will, like I said, the edible food is in statute, so we have to use that term. But in terms of our very drafty definition, we will try to start incorporating the important parts that need to be in that definition. So we welcome, certainly, your input on that, everyone's input. It's small right now, and I'm sure it's going to change our definition.
Okay, and at the back?
Okay, this is Sam here. I think Roberto hit what I wanted to say, but I do have another comment to make. If you want to actually determine the full impact of food waste, we should go beyond the kind of analysis we are doing right now. For instance, just giving us the number of the tons of carbon monoxide or methane created is not enough. What would be that impact on health of human beings will be a big inclusion to the analysis. And that requires that we do a more full-blown cost-benefit analysis to actually capture all those benefits and costs. And basically, if you use a model like implant that was presented by Claire, that is just a one-time kind of analysis, giving you a macro model, macro-level indicators. That doesn't cover all the benefits and costs that could be created over time. So I think to be more inclusive, we need to make sure that we do a full-blown cost-benefit analysis to capture all those. In terms of what Kay presented, I think you have used a 3-year time frame to do your cost-benefit analysis. And I don't know why that was the case and whether that will provide us a full indication of the impacts.
I don't know actually why that 3-year number was chosen, because I wasn't as intimately involved with the research. Peter, I don't know if you know any better.
No, I wasn't either, but I think it's a standard accounting sort of payback, quite a conservative payback period. If you're saving that that cost, then there's going to be some continuation of that good practice, and 3 years you think is quite a conservative time frame.
And again, the target audience was the CFO, who tends to think in shorter time frames, and to focus really on that pure financial case, recognizing that there are a lot of other embedded costs, benefits, non-financial aspects that need to be considered. But if you were to just sum it up to and narrow it down the scope to what is the CFO going to care about, a 3-year time frame is, to Peter's point, more traditional. So my assumption is that's why, and when the report comes out, the methodology will be in there. And there may be, I forget if there's some explanation about the choice of time frame.
And Peter, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, great presentations, everyone. And Claire, if you can stick around for the technical questions I might be asked later, that'd be great. And I love the schools initiative, Pete. That's really, really powerful. Just an observation, really. It goes back to Kai's point and the report. We did a lot of work with businesses and fed into a lot of the case studies into the report. And what we find when we work with businesses, big and small, and look at food waste, is that because food waste hasn't got a natural owner in a business, it's not like water or energy or packaging, that there's no one person in the organization who's taking ownership of it. And that's what we really find works really well, is when a business sets a target, gives someone in a senior position the responsibility for looking at food waste, because it's a factor from marketing, from procurement, from technical and specifications, all the way through a business. And that's why often the financial case is lost, because it's in different pots and different budgets and different parts of the business. But the report hopefully will get the CFO and businesses to put their heads together and go, come on, let's report our food waste, the true cost of waste, and then actually some of that action will start to fall into place.
Great, thank you very much.
I could follow up on that just real quick too. The fragmentation, I mean, even as we work with hotels and other businesses, you have, even at the property level, they're not, if you had the chef at a catered event responsible for paying for the food waste they generate, you'd probably have a totally different model where they would be incentivized to reduce it. So we're actually going to test that in part of our hotel work, is that's fragmented at the hotel level, so the chef's not even paying for their food waste, so why do they recognize or want to do anything about it? So. They're paying the cost of food, but they're not paying the disposal of the waste that comes out the back. So we're going to play around with this a little bit, but again, if you're incentivized to reduce that disposal and you're responsible for that disposal cost, which they typically aren't, it's usually property operations or facility managers, maybe it changes the game a little bit.
And I know we have two final. You need to get your microphone, unfortunately. Yeah. And go ahead, Gabriela. We'll come back to you.
Well, in the name of a chef, because I'm a chef and I'm a cook, and I'll be in the kitchen, and we are taking care of that in Mexico, really. Like, we know that we wasted a lot of food over there, like cooking, but all the chefs, well, maybe we are trying to be more creative, like an example that I just said yesterday, like the pineapple and everything, and we can make like maybe more dishes that we think with all these. We don't name waste. We just name like trimming, like the trimming of the vegetables, and we can reuse it. But we are thinking so. It's just like a comment and a suggestion. Well, just to be close to the hotels and restaurants associations, and as well all the caterings and canteen companies like Sodexo, Compass, because they have like a Better Tomorrow plan or something like that they are taking care of the food waste and as well food solutions. Sorry.
Okay, Gabriela.
Commercial.
Right. We have one final comment question.
Yes, thank you. So this question is for Peter. I'm wondering in your pilots with Hilton if you're looking also at sustainable procurement. With the rise of food rescue marketplaces that are popping up, I'm curious if Hilton would be interested in accessing food that is aesthetically imperfect, and so looking at it from the procurement standpoint.
Yeah, I think the two concepts should be married together. So a lot of the partnerships with our partners have been around sustainable sourcing, sustainable seafood, and I think the two concepts need to be together. You have to have sustainable sourcing and waste reduction as part of your overall food management practice, and they're one and the same, really. That's the same strategy, ultimately. So yes.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you very much to our panel. Once again,